Today, we become legends.
You guys seem to really like tier lists and just kind of tier lists about random stuff, you know, not necessarily meta tier lists. I have done one of those, but just tier lists about kind of random stuff. So today I'm going to be doing a steroids tier list, which I'm pretty sure no one's done before. Should be a pretty original idea. But yeah, I basically got all of the steroids in Smite, as far as I know. I could be missing a couple, but basically a steroid to me is like something that's kind of main purpose is to give you a self buff, you know, be that power, attack speed, movement speed, any of that. And it's also sort of active, it's not just like a permanent passive. Like I'm not including Freya passive here, because I don't know, if it does give you just like a passive buff to lifesteal, but I feel like it's not really classed as a steroid. I feel like to be classed as a steroid, you have to actually do something to make it work, you know, activate the ability, build something up. But yeah, these are all the ones I have here that I think are in Smite. There's 39 of them here, and they're ordered by alphabetical order by God. So yeah, let's just jump straight in with Achilles Radiant Glory, which is his 2. Alright, just added an S plus category here, just because I feel like some of these probably will warrant an S plus, and we have a little bit more range to play stuff here, but yeah. But yeah, Achilles 2 is super good. It gives you a bunch of healing, a bunch of extra power, a bunch of extra protections, like pretty much unconditionally. Sort of like a mini built-in Glad Shield, like the pre-nerf Glad Shield before they changed it. Gives you CCR as well, which is really underrated. I feel like a lot of people don't recognize that Achilles 2 gives you 20% CCR, which is super good. I think I'm going to put this in maybe S or S+. I think I'll put it in S for now, but as I play small things, it might move up to S+, because this is super good. Like, not only does it give you a bunch of extra power and protections as like a passive thing, plus the CCR, but then it also gives you that big heal on all of your abilities, and it's on a relatively low cooldown as well, so yeah, definitely one of the more powerful steroids in the game here. AMC's Hives, so they're pretty good. They give you not only movement speed and attack speed, which is pretty standard for a hunter steroid, but they also give you the healing, like the passive HP 5, which is very good. But they are also conditional. It's not like you can just activate this in a team fight and guarantee that you have that. You have to kind of find a place to put your hive. So I think I'm going to go with A. If this was just unconditional, like a decent duration steroid that gave you all these stats, it might be S. But I think the fact that it's conditional on making sure you place your hives in places where the enemies won't instantly destroy them, I think I'm going to put it in A too. So for those who don't know ability icons, this is Apollo's passive, which is a 100% attack speed buff for 5 auto attacks. After it gains 10 successful stacks, which you can get from either basic attacking or dashing through minion waves and dashing through gods and things like that. So this is definitely really good. I think I'm very tempted to put this one in S+. I think I'm going to. Like, this steroid is just nuts. It's 100% attack speed. It's the most attack speed of any steroid in the entire game by a decent margin. And it's also on a passive. Like, granted, you can't necessarily control exactly when it activates. If this was just click a button and it activates, it would be insane. But even the fact that you can't fully control it, you kind of can, because like you can build up a couple of stacks and then dash through a wave, and then that gets you the full passive ready to go for like a boxing situation. But in team fights, it can be a bit hard to stack up, which is understandable. But a 100% attack speed buff that's on your passive and doesn't take up one of your ability slots definitely warrants S+ for me. Arachne 2, I want to go with like B for this. Like a 70% attack speed steroid is pretty good just on its own, that's why it's not like lower than this, but often you don't really get the stun off, you know, either because you have to target switch and you don't hit the same target 3 times. Like, if this was just your 3rd basic attack, stuns, it would be a lot more powerful, but the fact that you have to hit the same target 3 times means you can't target switch in a team fight. You have to either laser focus down someone and make sure you land those 3 autos, or like if you switch to a different target, you forgo the stun. And often you get like peeled off, you get stunned or something, and you don't get the stun yourself. And honestly, it's just not that good. Artemis steroid, so this is actually the inspiration for me making this. I was thinking, you know, Artemis steroid is actually really underrated and pretty good, so I think it's not as good as Achilles 2. Maybe I should put Achilles 2 in S+, thinking about it. Because Artemis steroid is better than AMC's, I feel like. Because it's 80% attack speed, 20% movement speed for 5 seconds, and it's unconditional with a relatively low cooldown once you rank it up. Which for Artemis is super good, like she's more of a late game god, so yeah, I think it's better than Hives, but it's also worse than Achilles 2, so I'm going to move Achilles 2 up here. I think it deserves to be S+, honestly. Achilles 2 does so much stuff for you, but yeah. Artemis steroid, 80% attack speed, 20% movement speed once you get late game, it's just very good. Like it's a solid fundamental hunter steroid. Okay, Awilix Ultimate. So this is a good example of something I wanted to mention with this tier list. I'm not considering the like kind of active effects of any of these abilities, I guess. So like For this one, I'm just considering using this ultimate as a steroid. I'm not considering the pull and the damage effects, so I'm just considering the fact that it gives 70% attack speed and 60 power, which is very good. So definitely S, I think. It's probably a little better than Artemis 2, but it's not on the level of these two quite yet. Mostly because it's an ultimate and it does have a relatively long cooldown, and often you're not using this ultimate just for the steroid. Like, if this was on a basic ability and gave 70% attack speed and 60 power, it'd obviously be nuts, but the fact that it's on a super long cooldown brings it down a little bit. And I think it's roughly in line with Artemis 2. Maybe a little better. Butcher Blades. So this gives 30 passive power, which is very good, and then obviously there's 70% true damage. Not 70%, sorry. 70 true damage flat for 6 seconds, which is really good. Doesn't give any attack speed, which most steroids do, actually. But usually Baka doesn't need too much attack speed. He builds into a lot of it anyway, so it's useful to have the extra power and true damage. I think it's probably about on the level of AMC Hives. Like, it's good. I don't know, maybe it's a little better. A lot of these tiers are kind of murky, like I feel like it's better than Hives, but not as good as these two. For now, I'll leave it in A, but this might move. This is a very close to S tier placement, I think. So this one's very hard to rate. I was considering not actually putting Bastet Ultimate on the tier list because it's sort of weird. Like, I probably would class it as a steroid because, like, it's sort of a self buff that gives you, like, bonuses. But it's also kind of not at the same time. But if you do consider it a steroid, I think it has to be S+, right? It's like the only reason Bastet can really do anything. Like, her base kit doesn't really do that much, but if she activates the ult, she can hit pretty hard and has like big AoEs. Can summon multiple cats, so like, I think this has to be S+ if I am including it in the tier list. But I could definitely see an argument for not including this because it's sort of not really a traditional steroid. You could say it's almost more like a stand switch than it is like a steroid, but yeah, if we're including it on this tier list, it's definitely S+ for sure. Cernunnos one, so this is good but not insane. I'd say probably A. Like, it's got a lot of variety, like, you can choose for the situation, like, you know, hitting them once with Autumn to make sure you reduce the protections, then going into Summer Heat. You know, you can Winter if you need to, you can lifesteal, obviously, you know, for taking objectives or just healing in lane and things like that. It's very versatile, but each of the individual effects aren't that strong, so I don't think it warrants a higher placement, because each individual effect isn't as good as, like, any of these steroids, but the fact that it has 4 different ones you can choose from, like, bumps it up a little bit. Chernobog, so this is just a 60% attack speed steroid for 5 seconds, it's not that good. Like, it's very bog standard. Obviously, the ability does something itself as well, but I'm not considering what the ability actually does, I'm just considering the steroid part of it for this tier list. And 60% attack speed for 5 seconds is kind of meh. And also, that's as you rank it up. At rank 1, this is 20% for 3 seconds, which is kind of bad, so I'm going to put it in C. I think it's definitely worse than Arachne Steroid, actually. Arachne Steroid gives more attack speed and the potential for a stun, even though it's only for 3 autos, but still. And I think we have our first D tier placement with Chiron. I was considering not including this one as well, because it's not really, you won't really class Chiron Dash as a steroid, but it does give you a self buff to your basic attacks, which is kind of what steroids are. It just gives you bonus power on your basic attacks, 10 up to 50. Which is good, but in reality, when you're dashing, you know, 1, you have to be dashing aggressively to get use out of this, and 2, even if you are dashing aggressively, you get maybe 2 auto attacks off in that time, possibly 3 if you have a lot of attack speed, which just isn't really worth it. It's not that good, honestly. Chronos 2, so this is much like Cernunnos 1, actually, and I think I'll probably put it in the same tier. So you get 35% attack speed, which isn't anything crazy, but then you also get, like, the big movement speed. You get 20%, and then it scales up to, like, 40% by the end of the ability, which is very good for maneuvering in teamfights and things like that. But then you also have each of the sections, which, in my opinion, each section is better than Cernunnos 1, but obviously Cernunnos 1 is kind of permanent. This is only for 7 seconds, but 7 seconds is a long time for a steroid. And the effects it gives are very good. Like, you can heal for, I think it's like something a little over 10% of your max health if you use the healing one. Free abilities, bonus magical power or bonus magical power to basic attacks, which is just really good. I may actually move this one up to S, because each of the sections does like so much work for you, and the fact that it lasts 7 seconds, that's longer than almost every steroid in the game, I feel like. Most steroids kind of cap out at about 5 seconds, but this one lasts a long ass time, so yeah, I think I'll put this one in S. Cupid, probably also D tier. Much like Chiron, this feels like it's his dash, by the way, that gives him passive attack speed and then the movement speed when you're walking on the thing. Once again, this is kind of like, you use it for the dash. It's not really considered amazing for the actual steroid purposes. It's just 20% passive attack speed by the time you've ranked it up, and you rank this ability last. And then obviously you get a little bit of movement speed on the dash trail, but it's not really designed to be an amazing steroid, it's just a nice little boost. And really, you're using this for the dash, but I'm not considering that for the tier list, so yeah, D tier. Erlang 1, so this is another one that I wasn't really sure about including, but I feel like it kind of classes as a steroid. It's insanely good though. This is like a big reason Erlang Jungle's been so viable over a long time. I think S is probably worthy for it. Gives you tons of extra damage on your basic attacks for 5 seconds, and it pretty much has no cooldown. It has maybe a 3 or 4 second cooldown if you're like boxing someone, because every time you hit them, it reduces the effect by 1 second, and if you have a decent amount of attack speed, then that's not going to take long at all. It has an extremely low cooldown because of that. Like, it's not actually a 14-second cooldown, it's more like a 4 or 5 second cooldown. Especially because it also triggers on minions, so you can just have it up like all the time basically, and it's just a ton of extra damage on all your basic attacks. It's 75 plus 10% scaling, which is probably going to be at least 100 damage by late game on all your basics. Super strong. And then we have Erlang's second steroid, which is his mink form attack speed buff. It's not that good. Like, they removed the haste from it. If it still had the haste, it would be a lot higher, but how much is this? Let me check real quick. Yeah, it's 35% attack speed and nothing else, so I think I almost want to put this in D tier. Because obviously I'm not considering the fact that you get the mobility or the damage from this. I'm just considering the fact that it gives you 35% attack speed. Which honestly is maybe worthy of a D tier placement. If it still had haste, it would be up in like B or maybe even A, because haste is a super powerful effect to have, but they removed that a little while ago. And yeah, it's just not amazing for the steroid factor without the haste. Fafnir, let me rank Coerce in normal form first. Coerce in normal form is still good. I'd say maybe A tier. It's like a bunch of attack speed, a bunch of extra damage, and you can give it to like any of your carries, like the one you think will do best with it, and it also self-heals you a little bit, which is really good. And then Dragon Form Coerce is obviously S+. If there was an SS tier, it would be in that as well. This ability is busted. Obviously it's limited time, so it makes sense that it's busted, but being able to buff your entire team with the Coerce buff, which is like 30% attack speed, 20% bonus damage, and then obviously the self-heal as well works in Dragon Form. This is just like the ultimate way to siege or to burn objectives, and being able to buff your entire team by that much is like almost more than a steroid, but I thought I'd include it anyway just because it's funny to think about how good this ability is. So Fenrir 2, 80 power and 35% lifesteal is very good. The only reason this doesn't seem really broken is that it's on Fenrir. If this was on like any ranged character, if this was on a mage or on a hunter, this would be one of the most broken abilities in the entire game. It's just that Fenrir can't really utilize the extra power and lifesteal as well. But even on Fenrir, it's still pretty good. But just imagine if like you had a mage or something that could just activate a buff that gave them like 120 magical power, which is roughly equivalent to 80 physical, maybe a little more, and 35% lifesteal. It'd just be nuts. So like maybe on a mage ADC, or like I said, just on a hunter, this would be super good. So I'm ranking this kind of as it is, not as it is on Fenrir, because on Fenrir it doesn't seem that amazing, but just the stats of this alone are super good for like 6-second buff as well. So Freya's abilities are kind of hard to rank because she kind of, like, Freya's 1 and 2 are her kit. She doesn't really do too much when she doesn't have them up, so it makes them seem like they're super good because, like, oh, Freya does nothing and then she melts you when she uses these two, but these are kind of just, like, normal Freya, and when she doesn't have these, it's like, she doesn't really do much. So I think I'm just going to put both in A tier, honestly. Like, they are quite good. Like, turning your auto attacks into ranged is kind of something that's hard to rate, because no other god really does that. But, like, the bonus damage, the durations are pretty long. Like, 100 plus 25% power on Irradiate is very good. A lot of gods would love to have that. And then, like, turning your autos into AoE, like I said, is kind of hard to rate, but then it also gives the slow and stuff like that, so... And they also have very low cooldowns, because they go on cooldown immediately. Yeah, I'll just leave them in A tier. They're very hard to rate, these two, against other steroids, because they're not really the same as other steroids. Freya functions very differently. Hachiman, sorry buddy, but you have to go in D tier. This is another one of those things where it's like a very secondary effect, and it's the ability that you want, not the steroid part of it, but it's a 5 up to 15% attack speed increase. Yeah, it can affect multiple people, which sometimes is relevant on objectives, but or like maybe on sieges, but ultimately this is just trash. Like, yeah, I think this double stacks for Hachi. Like, he gets attack speed when he casts it, and then if he stands in the banner, he gets attack speed as well. So it could be up to 30%, but 30% is still very pitiful, and you have to like stand in the same location to be able to get it. You can't like run around with the buff. So yeah, I think it's definitely D tier. Izanami, this one's very good. So kind of like Freya, it's sort of hard to rate that it turns your autos into like non-boomerangs, because no other god really has that, but 75% attack speed and 25% bonus damage on your autos for like a 10-second cooldown is insanely good. The buff lasts 6 seconds, which is on the upper end for steroids. I think S tier is a pretty good placement for this. Like, it's probably about on the level of Artemis steroid. It's like a very similar amount of attack speed, but you get bonus damage instead of movement speed. So yeah, I think S tier is a pretty good placement for this one. So believe it or not, Jing Wei technically has 3 steroids in her kit, so we're going to be ranking all of these, but a lot of them are very trash. So the one is a 40% attack speed increase, which I think I might put in C tier. I think it's a little better than these ones. The 2 is like the AoE plus the crit chance, which I think also C tier. Or maybe B. Yeah, it's probably B actually. Like 20% crit is pretty good, and then you also get the AoE basics, which can be very useful, like for either wave clear or just like AoEing people in team fights. So yeah, I think B tier is pretty good for this one. And then agility is just like a little bit of extra movement speed and power. Probably C tier as well. After she dashes, she gains like a bunch of extra power, and like 30 extra power and like 15% movement speed. Which is decent. It's probably better than these ones, honestly, but once again, it's sort of an ability that you use for the dash. You don't necessarily use it for the steroid, so it's kind of low down on this tier list. Viper Shot is fucking nuts, dude. I can't believe they buffed this. I have to go with S+. Like, it's 80% attack speed for 4 shots, and you always get 4 shots now. You don't have to rank it up to get multiple shots. And each one does 140 plus 40% scaling, so the ability itself does 560 plus 160%. And that's just on the bonus damage. That doesn't count any of your actual basic attack damage either. This is just nuts. It's on a 10-second cooldown. Like, what is that? Since you can fire them super fast, like, once you fire all 4 shots, it goes immediately on cooldown, and you're going to have it back up super fast. Yeah, this is one of the better steroids in the game. Mercury 2? Probably S. Or maybe A. It's like a 70% attack speed buff, got a pretty long cooldown, and then it also has a little bit of passive movement speed, which is very good for Mercury. I feel like Fenrir 2 was, seems worse because it's on Fenrir. Mercury 2 seems better because it's on Mercury. Like, Mercury already has so much extra damage and stuff, like such high basic attack damage that it seems like a 70% attack speed steroid is like making him completely busted, but if you put this on a different god, like 70% attack speed is just pretty generic and decent. It's not amazing. So Nice 2 is now technically a steroid. You actually get an attack speed buff. But once again, I'm not considering the other aspects of the ability, so I will consider the heal, because I've been considering heals for other things like Fafnir and things like that. But yeah, I'm not considering like the damage of it or the debuff or anything like that. But it's a 30% attack speed buff now, which is decent. I'll probably put it in C tier. Like, it's a little better than these, especially because it heals you as well. Actually, since it heals you, I think I'll put it in B. Because like, it's a decent heal, and if you hit a weave, it's a very good heal. So Neja Sash is actually pretty good. I think I'll go for A. It's like 55% attack speed, lasts 6 seconds when it's maxed out. A bit of crit chance as well, which can be useful. And then also you heal, obviously, from the passive, which is super good. They can heal up to 15% max health. It's got a decently long cooldown, but as you rank it up, it does go down. I feel like it's a very balanced steroid, this. It gives a lot of everything, but it's not too crazy. Oleron, so this is 40% attack speed for 6 seconds when it's maxed out. I'm not really considering the active effect of the ability where you throw the suns at them. I'm just considering the steroid part, which makes me probably want to put it in B. If I was considering the whole ability, it'd be a bit higher, but the damage from the suns isn't really part of the steroid aspect of the ability, so I'm just considering the attack speed that you get here. Poseidon 2? So this is pretty good. Probably A tier again. It's like 70 base damage per hit, which is 210. And then you get the extra movement speed and stuff. It's a relatively low cooldown, decently long lifetime. It's just pretty balanced. Once again, this one's kind of hard to rate because there's nothing else like it in the game, really, and it's very unique to Poseidon. Like, you don't really know how this will perform on other gods, but I think A tier is a pretty fair placement for it. So Rama 2 is probably B. It's 50% attack speed for 5 seconds, which is probably a little below average for steroids. Granted, it does have a pretty low cooldown, and it does generate astral arrows, but I'm not really considering the fact that it generates astral arrows, just the steroid aspect, which is 50% for 5 seconds. It's okay. It's probably a little lower than these A tier placements. So Set Ult was another one, kind of like Bastet Ult, that I'm not really sure if I should have included, but it does kind of feel like a steroid to me. But if I am including it, it's S+ for sure. It makes Set, basically. Like, the extra damage, the extra healing, the extra movement speed, like spawning multiple clones, it really is just, it makes Set. And without it, it'd be trash. So I think that deserves an S+ placement. So Sol passive is nuts. Even after all the nerfs it's taken, it was even more busted at release. 25% power, 25% attack speed, and 20% extra basic attack damage, it's just nuts. Like, this is probably better than Apollo's passive, which is already very good as like a passive attack speed steroid. This thing also gives power and basic attack damage as well. This is just crazy. It always has been. Thanatos. So this is 30% speed or 60% speed if you're chasing a low health enemy, which happens sometimes, and 35 pen. I'd probably go with B. It is good, don't get me wrong, and it does allow you to kind of build differently with Thanatos, where you can build into like only about 15 flat pen and then just max out your flat pen by pressing 2, which does open up different build options for him. It can build into stuff like Hydras and Trans a bit earlier maybe, so he doesn't have to like immediately rush into like a double pen build or anything like that, which can be good. But honestly, compared to a lot of the other steroids I have in A, it's probably not as good as they are. Ula 2, they're probably both in about the same category. I'd say they're both C tier. Like, he's a stance switcher, so his abilities are naturally meant to be a bit weaker, but Bow gives you 45 power, and Axe gives you 40% movement speed. Actually, maybe they're B. They're not as bad as these ones down here, I don't think. Like, 40% movement speed can be very good, but that's all it gives you. In fact, I'm going to separate them. I think Bow is significantly better than Axe. So yeah, I think C tier for Axe, B tier for Bow is about right. 45 power is worth way more than 40% movement speed usually. Usually with axes, you just use it if like you're trying to get away or chase a kill, but the bow one is like you kind of activate it for your combo. You activate it if you want to basic attack stuff. It's good for shredding down objectives. And they both last 5 seconds, which is pretty average for steroids. For mana ult, so once again, this is kind of like, I'm not sure if I should have included all these ultimates like Bastet, Set, and Vimana, but it has to be S+. I mean, it has to be S+, right? Like 35 protections, 100 power, a bunch of health regen, a bunch of shielding, a bunch of movement speed. Like, this just gives so much stuff. You can't not put this in S+ if you're including it in the tier list. And finally, Xbalanque's Bolas. Once again, these are kind of something that no other god really has, but I think they're pretty good. Maybe A tier. Like, early game, until recently, they were basically free, but I think they cost a little more now to the point where, like, you can't just use them constantly to clear waves, but they give you, like, decent early game wave clear, good poke, and then late game, extra 50 damage on your shots is pretty good. And you can also, like, branch to people for a little bit of extra poke and things like that. This is just a pretty good, like, quintessential steroid, I feel like. And that's about it. It's possible I missed some. I went through all the Smite wiki pages for all the gods, looking for all the ones that I would consider steroids. There's a couple that I probably didn't choose, like I said, like Freya's passive. I don't really count that as a steroid, even though it's just like a lifesteal buff. But if there's any you think I should have included, let me know down below, and I'll try and reply to you with a rating that I would go for with them. And also just let me know overall what you think of my placements. Like, if you think any of these S+ ones are like trash and shouldn't be there, or if you think any of these D tier ones should be S+, like, I doubt that. But yeah, if you disagree with any of my placements, or if you just agree, let me know down below. Also, if you do want to see more tier lists like this, it's pretty easy to use this site, and I can make tier lists like these like relatively easily, and they're pretty fun to make. So if you have any other ideas for topics you want to see covered in tier lists, like related to Smite, then let me know down below, and I'll catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.